What's going on, Stim Junkies? High Stim Ace here. Happy New Year to all of my High Stim pre-workout enthusiasts. We have officially crossed over to 2026, and that means that the High Stim experience is about to get better than ever. And we got so many plans for this show, guest appearances and whatnot down the line. But for the time being, it's me. It's the legendary co-host, Alex Hammerstone, and we are here to bring you the High Stim experience. What's going on, brother? You're looking pumped as always.
Not too much. Any pump I have is just from the breakfast, because all I did this morning was cardio. I switched up, so I'm doing my weight training in the evenings now. So
interesting. So wait, you're taking High Stim pre-workouts in the evening time right now? How are you doing that?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm doing it so I'm not training that late. Like usually 3 p.m. ish, like 4 at the latest. But it's not too bad. I'm still able to sleep, and if for some reason, like the other night, we ended up going to the gym like around 5. So I was like, I chose a pre-workout that wasn't too crazy. It was actually freaking great. I don't know if you've tried the new, the Devastate.
No, I haven't.
Man, freaking hiccups just came back. You got to be freaking kidding me, right? The new Devastate pre-workout, and I remember it's the one that had like some flack about it because it's they do like the 40-20 servings. This one is 30-15, so people are like 15 servings, what the heck. But it was freaking great, man. It reads kind of like borderline like daily driver, like maybe you'd call it like Stim Junkie daily, but I loved it, man. The taste was good. Performance was good. Felt great on it, man. Trained legs. Had an awesome session.
Who makes that pre-workout? I forgot the company name.
Freaking, where is it? I just had it. Hold on. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, sure. So Hammer's running his own pre-workouts, and I also been running a bunch of crazy ones to start off the year while he's looking for it, and I think he found it right over there. Bro, you're storing your pre-workouts all over the place now. I think you're running out of shelf space.
Over, bro. I got the main setup. I got a treasure chest, and then I have like random boxes of them. But yeah, it's Inspired Nutraceuticals.
Inspired Nutra. Yeah, I've heard of them. So they supposedly make, semi Stim Junkie type of products. That one, yeah, I've heard of it before. I've never actually tried any other stuff though, but I heard it's a solid experience.
Yeah, the flavor's like a black rainbow, and I cannot put my finger on exactly what it reminds me of, because it's like it's like an artificial grape. It's almost like a grape soda, but it's like it tastes exactly like something else I've had before, but I can't put my finger on it. But I loved it, man. Really freaking hit a pre-workout. Like I'm excited to use it again.
Does it taste like maybe you're thinking of the grape lollipops, the blow pops? Does it taste something like that?
That could be it. That could be it, man.
I had
just
something
like that artificial where it's like, this doesn't taste like grape. It tastes like purple.
Yeah, purple. Yeah, I know. Just like Gatorade, when you say, what's your favorite Gatorade flavor? Oh, I like blue. I like purple. Wait, we somehow associate a flavor with the colors, but that's how it is, bro. I got back from the gym today running Assassin V9 for the second time. I ran it on Saturday and I ran it today. So back-to-back days because I'm dropping my review tomorrow. And man, this one's freaking amazing, bro. Not what you would expect from Assassin, but probably one of the best pre-workouts I've ran in a while, and I have a lot to say about it. The review's already been recorded literally right before we hopped on here. I finished recording. Just got to come up with a thumbnail, got to edit it, but that will be dropping tomorrow on the High Stim Ace channel. So guys, subscribe if you haven't yet. And whoever's joining us right now, leave your questions in the chat. As always, when it comes to the end of the show, we're going to go over some of these questions. We're going to answer them. We could talk about supplements, pro wrestling, New Year's resolutions, miscellaneous television. We are going to mention Stranger Things on this show. That's one of the topics. So definitely ask your questions. We will get to it later. So my friend, 2026, before we even get into training regimens or whatever, do you have any interesting stories for the new year? Something that maybe you did, maybe fireworks, whatever, because I have an interesting story I'll share in a little bit.
Honestly, the actual New Year's experience was, kind of meh, but it's because, my girl and I had taken a trip up north and we got a cabin, and it was freaking great, man. It was so wonderful. Just me and her, a lot of relaxing, a lot of just enjoying each other's company, taking some walks in nature, spending some time with the pup. We literally planned nothing. Like, we did like the one like thing we planned was like I brought like some painting kits. It was one of her Christmas presents. We did like a little painting together, but we just had a great time. The one downside was the bed was so uncomfortable that the first night I probably slept 2 hours, and I woke up. I was feeling all kinds of crappy, and then the second night there, we same thing happened. I woke up and I was just laying in bed, and we went to bed like I don't remember. Say it wasn't like that late, but it wasn't super early. But let's call it 11, and I woke up like I'm laying in bed at like 3 a.m. Maybe I'm falling back asleep. Looking at the clock, it's 4 a.m. Maybe I'm falling asleep a couple minutes. Looking at the clock, and I'm just laying there, trying to fall asleep, and then finally I give up. So I'm like, I get up, I go, I take the dog out. It was kind of hard to take the dog out because we had these steps that were really smooth, so he didn't want to walk up and down the stairs. So I had to pick him up and carry him, and I took him out. And also it was up north, so it was freezing cold. So anytime I took him out to pee, I had to get dressed, put on the hoodie. So I took the dog out, came back in, and I was like, whatever, I'm starting the day. So I made breakfast for both of us, and I opened the door, crack open the door, and babe, you want to get ready for breakfast? And she's like, oh, okay. I gotta take my medicine. I forgot. I always forget this. Like, what a freaking stupid thing. But she has to take a certain medication from because she had her thyroid removed when she had cancer, and she's not able to eat for 30 minutes until after. So she takes her. So I was like, okay. So I closed the door, finished everything up, played everything, put it on the table. I'm sitting there. 45 minutes go by. I text her, babe, you up? No response. And then I'm like, text her again, question marks. She's no response. I decide, okay, well, I just want to let her sleep, but I'm going to eat. So I eat my food, clean up all the dishes, do a couple other things. She's still sleeping. Finally, at like 2.5 hours later, I go in the bedroom and get in bed, and she's like, oh, I'm sorry. I was tired. I was like, and pretty much what I'm getting at is I just got awful freaking sleep. And it came down to that third night, and we had 3 nights booked. And I was like, babe, what do you think about going home tonight? And she's like, but we have it booked. I'm like, I have not slept. I can't sleep in this bed. It's too bad. So we ended up calling it early and coming home that night. So we got home in time for New Year's. But I was so miserably tired that like we stopped by her parents' house, set off some fireworks, and we were in bed by probably 10 o'clock.
Wow, man. So
but
first
we did start. I don't. That's how tired I was. I don't even think we finished it. We started the series finale of Stranger Things.
Interesting. So we're definitely going to talk about that. And the only thing I'm gathering from your entire story is that you, my friend, are getting old. And just like me, I was asleep before. Actually, well, we're going to talk about it. Okay. First of all, you mentioned fireworks. Fireworks are legal by Arizona, right? Where you're at?
Yeah.
Okay, of course, in New York City, nothing's freaking legal, and fireworks are obviously not legal here. But obviously, every 4th of July, every New Year's, you're going to hear them going off everywhere. So people either bring them from Jersey or from God knows where else. But it was interesting because a couple of months ago, during the 4th of July weekend, I was visiting my mom in Connecticut, and we went into a store called Acme, which is like one of their supermarket chains they have over there. And lo and behold, I'm going with the cart, and there is a whole section for fireworks. Now, as a Brooklynite going in there where we obviously can't get any of that stuff, we can barely get freaking sparklers here in Brooklyn. I'm seeing all these fireworks, and I'm like a kid in a freaking candy shop, or a kid in a High Stim pre-workout shop. Freaking started grabbing a bunch of shit without even thinking what I was grabbing. They have those prepackaged bundles. I actually have a couple over here. So, like one of these little bundles over here.
Yep.
And I have one of those other sealed ones, and this kind of ties into my story. So High Stim Ace, obviously big firework enthusiast, but here's the thing. So New Year's Eve, obviously I work on New Year's because I always work national holidays. They don't give us the days off. And I come home, I'm pretty tired. My gym closed early. They close at like 5 o'clock on New Year's Eve. I got home at about 6, so obviously didn't get to the gym. And we're just hanging out. Me and my girl, we're doing our thing, whatever. And then like I go to bed at around 10:30. I am freaking tired and, just pretty much have to wake up for work the next day. And I didn't hear any fireworks. Usually they start a little early, but I didn't hear anything. And I'm kind of going back and forth with her. I'm like, should I go outside and maybe just light a couple of fireworks, or maybe I shouldn't? I don't know. And it was freezing, by the way. New Year's Eve was freaking freezing over here. Like, I don't know, 15 degrees or something with wind. It was so goddamn cold. And just the thought of me going and setting off fireworks at like, it was already 11 o'clock or whatever. I'm like, I don't know, man. And then I'm thinking maybe I'll set it in my backyard, because I have this like tiny little shared backyard, but I have 2 floors above me, right? But I'm like, you know what? I'm a very considerate person. So I know it's New Year's Eve, but I'm not going to go ahead and put some fireworks over here and wake up the neighbors. I know the 3rd floor, they have kids. So, I'm just being me, being considerate. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't do it. And long story short, I didn't end up setting any of the fireworks, which is why I still have them here. And literally at like 11, I get to bed, whatever. I'm playing my Yu-Gi-Oh game on my phone. It's like 11:15, and I start hearing the fireworks go off nonstop, like crazy. But it sounded really, really close. It literally sounded like it was coming from the front. And not only did I hear it and it sounded like it was coming from the front, I was able to smell it, the sulfur or whatever that smell is, the smoke. I smelled it like literally someone was setting them off outside. I'm like, what the fuck is going on right now, man? Like, I usually hear it from, we have a block here called McDonald Avenue. It's like a big 2-way street, a lot of businesses. So I'm like 2 blocks away from McDonald Avenue, right? So usually the fireworks will be on McDonald Ave. That's where all the businesses are. And there's the train station there. So usually they set them off. So it's like you hear them, but it's like 2-3 blocks away. This was different. Like, this literally sounded like it was coming from the front of the house. But again, I'm already after a shower. It's cold outside. I'm in my Grinch pajamas, and I do not want to leave the comfort of my bed. So I end up not going outside, and I'm like, fuck it. I got to go to sleep. I got to be up for work tomorrow. I take my earplugs. I pop them in. It drowned out about 50% of the sound. But long story short, about 12:15, I ended up falling asleep. Woke up the next morning, and I'm getting ready for work, whatever. I head out. Bro, literally in the front of my house, because I'm in the back, so I have to go through the driveway and get to the front. In the front, I can't even describe to you the amount of empty fireworks shells that were there, literally the entire front of the house. So whoever was doing it was probably the neighbor from the shared apartment next door, and they probably went off. This must have been going on for hours. The amount of garbage that was there, like, I couldn't freaking believe it. I wish I took a picture, but I had to rush to work, and by the time I came back, it was already cleared out. And I'm just kicking myself. I'm like, God damn it, man. Have you gotten so old already that you're so lazy and you rather stay home with the pajamas than go outside and light off some fireworks when you have the legal excuse to do it? So I'm kind of kicking myself a little bit for it. I did compromise, though. I did compromise. Last night, I have some of these little ones, because you see in this bundle here, you get some of the big ones, right? And then like up top over here, somewhere hidden down below, you get like 2-3 of the little ones, which they're going to sparkle a little bit, but they're not really going to go boom and wake up half of the neighborhood. So I compromised last night. I lit a couple in the backyard, just the little ones. And at least this way I know I paid my due, and I did a little bit of fireworks on New Year's. So that's my New Year's story.
Yeah. Well, you brought up something that it's funny, because I actually I was thinking about this today, and I wanted to ask you, because people, hear us talking about, the gym and training and pro wrestling, and they don't realize that we're both kind of freaking dorks and nerds. And you mentioned Yu-Gi-Oh! I was curious if you ever got into Magic the Gathering.
So Magic the Gathering is actually a game I never got into. So I'll tell you how it started for me. Like when I was a kid, when I was like 7, 8 years old, I was born in 1990. So Pokemon, the anime or TV show, whatever you want to call it, it came out in 97, 98 on TV. They started airing it. So we had the local channel 11, and between 3 and 5 p.m. was the WB Kids Hour, where they aired all the cartoons. So they had Pokemon. They would have like the Batman, Superman animated series from the 90s, which freaking GOAT status, and like a whole bunch of other stuff that came out later. So that was like my block from 3 to 5 for cartoons. So Pokemon was in. Everyone was playing the Game Boy games. Everybody got into it. I'm talking about elementary school right now, like 7th, 8th grade. Everybody was into Pokemon. Then Yu-Gi-Oh! The anime came out. I forgot if it was in 99 or 2000, but it was like late elementary or early high school. So either like 8th or 9th grade. And it came in and it kind of took over, where everybody that was watching Pokemon and into Pokemon kind of like threw the Game Boys and the Pokemon games to the side, and everybody got into Yu-Gi-Oh! Like everybody was into the card game because there was a bit more of an edge to it, you know, in terms, I mean, we're talking about kids shows, right? But as far as those shows go, Pokemon was always very kid friendly. And then Yu-Gi-Oh! Was like a little bit darker. You had the Egyptian dark magic, the Shadow Realm, you know, and stuff like that. And even though the American version was very censored compared to the Japanese version, you still had themes of death and stuff like that on the show. And I don't know, it was just very interesting. And the card game itself is very addictive. Back then, it was a lot simpler. These days, they overcomplicated the shit out of it. But we got into playing it. Like, I would literally bring my Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck to class, and we'd be playing that nonstop in recess time, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever. And it's crazy to think about because they literally used to sell those decks over at like Rite Aid or anywhere because it blew up for a while. Yu-Gi-Oh! Was popping off for a long time. And those decks were like $10. Like, my mom literally bought me like 2 or 3 of each deck so I can have copies of the holographic card. And I checked on eBay recently how much those starter decks cost. Take a guess for a sealed one.
300.
Close, like $550. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of money, man. A lot of freaking money. And the game over the years, you know, they added new mechanics and stuff like that, and it got a little bit too complicated. So I stopped playing it for many years. But I recently kind of got back into it. They have the mobile game Duel Links, which I kind of got into, and I'm actually really enjoying it. So it's been a lot of fun. But you were asking about Magic the Gathering. I never got into it. I knew of it. I know people that played it. But for me, because I was always into Yu-Gi-Oh! During that time, that was my card game of choice. So I never got into Magic. But I did watch a very cool documentary on YouTube a while back. And I was actually searching for it recently. I don't remember what it was called. I don't remember if it was a Vice documentary. It was one of those like 20, 30-minute mini ones. But it was about 3 guys in their 40s who have been playing it for a while. And, you know, they have like their own little community. I forgot which town they live in, but they basically were, you know, talking about the game and the community and everything. And it was a very cool documentary. I watched it years ago, but I got to try to find it. If I find it, I'll definitely send it your way.
Yeah, please do. It's funny that you brought up how much the valuable the decks you used to have became, because for me, like I got back into. I'm kind of like you. Like, I play the mobile version of Magic the Gathering. I play it all the time because it's so easy. It just loads you up random stranger somewhere in the world. You play against each other. I pretty much play it every day. But I have no physical cards anymore. So I started collecting a little bit when I was a kid. But the thing with Magic the Gathering was, like, when I was a kid, like, it was more like older people were into it, like adults, and it was like you said, it was our generation was like the Pokemon and then the Yu-Gi-Oh. So I always had my cards and collected them, but I never had anyone to play against. And I had a couple times in life where, like, once, like, I had, like, you know, a friend of like my mom's or something was like, "Oh, your kid plays that game. I used to do that," and he gave me like his old big box of collection, right? And then, like, one other time we were like at some random thrift store, you know, in the middle of nowhere, and they had a huge collection, like a huge lot of it for sale for like $40, and I got a big whatever. So I had all these, like, I had the cards I had been collecting and buying booster packs and stuff, but then I also had this huge lump sum of random cards I acquired. And you know, time went on, and I you know, at some point I stopped even, like, you know, collecting or looking at them or building decks, and they just sat in my closet. And I worked with a guy. It was my first job when I was in my early 20s, and he was like in his 40s, and he actually still played and would like go and play tournaments with his friends. He was one of those guys. And, you know, so we'd chat about it every once in a while. And one year around Christmas, I just got the random thought, like, I was cleaning up my house and I saw my collection. I was like, you know what? I don't even play with these anymore. So I took them all, and for Christmas, I brought them. I said, "Hey, here you go. Merry Christmas." I gave him everything.
Wow.
And I just said, "Hey, you know, there's these 1 or 2 cards that were like my favorite because the artwork." I was like, "When you find those ones, give them to me." And he's like, "Okay, yeah." And he gave them to me. Then a couple days later at work, you know, I'm talking to him, and I'm like, you know, "Hey, do you know, find any good ones that, like, you're able to use for your deck?" He's like, "Yeah, there's a couple that, you know, we'll make it, and put in my decks and stuff. Thanks, man. And that was like it. Come to find, bro, a couple years later, because when I was a kid, you're just a kid. You don't even really understand like what cards are good because of like how they fit in like complicated strategies. Because Magic the Gathering is like very complex, strategic wise. It's not like when you're a kid, you're just like, oh, this monster has the highest attack points. It's cool, and realistically, that's not how the game works at all. But that's kind of how I approached it. And then come a couple years later, I found a website where they would like sell individual cards like used, and people would like have them on like auction sites. Bro, I had a couple cards that were like routinely selling for like 8 to 10 grand.
Oh my
this
God.
motherfucker at my job, like I'm doing a friendly gesture, and he knows he got these from me. He doesn't say a peep. Like, I'm like, are you kidding? Like, if someone did that for me, like, hey man, I got this stuff I'd be like, hey man, I think you should know what you're giving me. I don't think you realize, like, you just, like that was like, that would have been life changing for me in my 20s. But so man, just a huge side tangent of a story, but.
Bro, that's freaking crazy. My God, I can't even imagine the treasure troves you had in there. It hurts me on a physical level just hearing that story, bro. I'll tell you how I started my card collection, because the cards I have aren't really worth a lot of money. There's people that collect things just for the sake of collecting them, and they get like the 10 PSA rated cards, without a single flaw in them, whatever. I couldn't care less. For me, like, when I have a collection, it's not about how much is it worth. It's really sentimental for me, right? So I also have a small Pokemon card collection. I'm not like a huge Pokemon diehard. I play the games on Game Boy, DS. Like, I love those old 2D Pokemon games because they have a lot of RPG elements, and I'm a big RPG fan. Final Fantasy, Chrono Trigger, Xenosaga. Like, I'm super, super into RPGs, especially from Japan, and turn-based stuff. So for me, I always love the Pokemon games just because they're simple, but also have that addictive RPG mechanism. But a funny story, so me and my girl were going to Banya like 3 years ago. You know what a Banya is?
No.
It's like a Russian bathhouse, basically full of saunas, steam rooms. They usually have like a pool or a jacuzzi, and you go there for like the whole day, So it's kind of like a Russian spa, basically, but mainly focusing on saunas and steam rooms. So you see a lot of freaking old Russian men over there. But yeah, that's one of the experience caveats. But anyway, I went with her. It's used to be like $30. Now it's like $60 post-COVID. So when we go there, we go for like 5-6 hours to get our money's worth. And literally after we left, we were walking up the block to go to the train, because the train's like 6-7 blocks away. And we saw this tiny little card shop, like a hole-in-the-wall card shop, that I must have missed because it's so small, and we were rushing there from the train when we got there, and we must have just literally missed the entire shop. Tiny hole in the wall. You can easily miss it. We get in there, bro. It's this old guy named Gary, like this hippie dude from the 60s, super chill, down to earth guy. And it wasn't just cards. It was a lot of stuff from like the 80s and 90s, like a lot of figurines from like old Disney movies. Like they had the Hercules and Zeus from that animated Hercules movie. And they had like a bunch of wrestling, like WCW card packs, which I bought because they were like $1 each. I didn't even know WCW made wrestling packs, so I got a couple, and like a whole bunch of cool collectibles. But I'm there as as a 90s kid looking at this treasure trove of stuff, and I'm freaking just having the time of my life. And they had like a bunch of magazines also and stuff in the back. They had this one called Mad Magazine, which my girl used to read when she was in Cali. So she was going over all those magazines. That was in the back section. They had comic books there. I'm not really much of a comic book collector anymore. I do have graphic novels, and I have a massive manga section, physical media, because I do love reading paper. So I actually have a massive collection of graphic novels and manga, but not individual comics. It's just way too much to keep track of, volumes, crossovers, and shit like that. But I go to this shop, and he basically had Pokemon cards, and I'm like, yeah, let me check these out. He had them in binders, like a lot of binders, and we were both like committed to staying there for a little while. This guy was super chill, by the way, probably high off his rocker, 60s hippie, but super chill. And I'm just going through these cards, and basically the dude, like, I asked him, like, how much for these cards? They're newer cards. They're not like the Pokemon cards that I grew up with that were printed in 96, but they look nice, and a lot of them are holographic. He's like, oh, 50 cents for this one, $1 for this one. So I ended up dropping like $30. I bought a bunch of Pokemon cards because they looked cool. And I'm like, you know what? Let me start a little collection. Got myself a little binder on Amazon. A couple of years later, now I have 2 binders, and I have my classic collection where it's the original art for like that original first 2-3 sets. You have like the OG 96, 97, and then the Team Rocket, and then a little bit of GX. And, you know, I basically put them in order, but there's a lot of empty spaces. So I know down the line, if I want to pick up a certain card from eBay or TCG Player or whatever, you know, and I get like a card, I'm going to fill it in that empty space. You know, I basically put it by the order number, just showing you how much of a freaking nerd I am and how OCD I am when it comes to organization. But basically for Pokemon, I have 2 binders, one for old school cards, one for like newer cards, because the newer cards are pretty cool. Also, they have very cool 3D holographic effects, and I'm kind of a sucker for that shit. But then when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh, it's different, because when it comes to Pokemon, I never played the card game. I don't even know how to play the card game. People just collected those cards to collect them. So for me, it's more of like a nostalgic collectible. Every couple of months, I'll open the binder, just kind of admire it, go through it page by page, and then I put it away for the next 6 months. With Yu-Gi-Oh, just like I'm assuming with Magic the Gathering, you have decks, right? Like your pre-made decks. Mm-hmm. So in Yu-Gi-Oh, in the anime series, you had characters who all had their own kind of decks, you know? So I basically have a lot of these decks, and a lot of them I made myself. I would buy the starter decks, the structure decks, and then get single cards or whatever. And I just have like, at this point, probably like 10 pre-made decks, but ones that I made myself, going back many years, and they've just been sitting here collecting dust. But recently, because I rediscovered this mobile game, you know, and I'm learning the modern mechanics, which initially I was very against it because, you know, the original classic game was very back and forth. There was strategy involved, but everything kind of made sense. It was simple. The modern version, it's all about getting the crazy combo on your first, second turn and then just finishing your opponent off in like one fell swoop. You know, that's the modern version of Yu-Gi-Oh! So it's a completely different experience, and I really hated it because I like the old cards, and you know, the game has like 10,000 freaking cards, bro. So I'm like, I know the first 2 generations, they're up to like generation 9 or 10 right now. I don't know any of these new freaking cards. So I'm supposed to sit here and like read 10,000 cards and know what each thing does. It's crazy. But little by little, I'm digressing. I started getting into it one character at a time, one mechanic at a time. You know, there's like different summoning mechanics. So one mechanic at a time. I really got into this game, bro. I got so freaking into it. And to the point where now I'm buying more Yu-Gi-Oh decks just to have the same decks that I have in the game, even though I'm never ever going to play the physical game because I have no one to play it with, but just so I have the physical version of what I have in the digital world. Am I freaking crazy or what?
Yeah, man, it's I don't know, man. It's one of those things. It's like when you're not involved, it's very easy to completely be, oh, that's silly. And then like you get a little bit involved, and it's like next thing you know, you're just falling down this hole where it's like, I gotta just see how deep it goes.
Yeah, bro. It's freaking crazy, man. Got some comments over here from people. Somebody mentioned the hiccups. Oh my god, that's funny,
dude,
bro.
I swear, they freaking I was all good, and then the last 2 days they've come on freaking so strong. I don't know. I have no idea what's caused it. There's been times in my life where I get them at the nighttime, and I'll be up all night because I can't stop hiccuping. And I was like, I've tried to like isolate like what causes it, and I have no luck, man.
So I have two folk remedies, but I don't recommend you try them on the show right now. One of them is to hold your breath and do jumping jacks for like 40 seconds. I don't know why somebody told me that as a kid. It does seem to work, but you're going to feel very lightheaded. And then the other one is just chug a shitload of water, but like chug a shitload of water. So I don't know, but we're not going to try any of this stuff right now. I'm just looking through the comments. You know, we don't usually go through the comments in the beginning of the show, but fuck it. It's 2026. We're going to switch it up a little bit. Mr. G is asking, is Alex in AEW? Ooh, interesting question.
Man, I toyed with people a little bit, you know, because one of these like wrestling websites posted like, you know, the top current free agents coming into 2026, and I was on the list. And then a couple days later, another news site put like the top 10 people AEW should consider signing in 2026, and I was like number 3 on that list. So there's all this like speculation, and then AEW is coming to Arizona in a couple weeks, So I shared their like upcoming schedule and I'm just playing the game, messing with the marks a little bit, you know. But it created all this buzz to the point where somebody involved with one of the companies I currently work for was like, "Hey, are you signing with AEW? Because we kind of need to know that." And I was like, I'm just playing around."
Oh
So
shit, that's crazy, man. You don't think about the other side of things, when you have prior commitments, when you're a recurring character on certain shows, that could send panic, if
yeah,
they're not expecting it. Wow, that's freaking crazy, man. AEW, I tried watching it a couple of times. Granted, it was a long time ago. There's things I like, there's things I don't like, but I feel like they are definitely more for the people in this day and age, if that makes sense, because WWE with the crazy ticket prices and everything going on right now. And it seems like they really don't prioritize the fans at the moment, and they don't seem to give a shit because they're raking in the money. They're just always talking about their gates and how much money they're making. And it seems like the fans really are getting the shaft. Meanwhile, AEW, I know they have more mature content on TV, more blood, more violence and stuff like that, but they seem to be the family-friendly product going into 2026. Our buddy Harry from what's that? Premium Supplement Reviews. Our buddy Harry, he literally went to an AEW VIP meet and greet type of situation, right? I think he paid like $400 and he freaking got his photo taken with a bunch of stars. He got like a whole VIP package. He got to hold the belt and take photos with it. Like I think he even paid less. I think it was like in the 300s. For that amount of money, the amount of stuff that he got, the amount of social media content he got, and obviously the memories that he got, for $300, that's nothing. In WWE, a package like that, bro, probably 10 grand or something like that. It's freaking crazy, man.
Yeah, I think I would say my impression is that like the WWE approach is looking at things from like an analytical standpoint. Like they're looking at like the money coming in from this, that, the other, like the ratings, the what does this do, and they're trying to create a product based on that and predict outcomes and drive revenue in different directions. And AEW is trying to create a product very much like listening to like the fan criticism of the show and what matches fans want to see. And I'm not saying either is wrong, because in theory the way WWE's approaching it should, if they're like trying to follow feedback from those other those other avenues, it should in theory be pleasing to some of the fans, but it doesn't always pan out that way. But that's also, I have no idea what I'm talking about. That's just kind of my perspective from the outside looking in.
Well, the interesting thing about you sharing that AEW post and people putting you at number 3 on that list, that Tony Khan actually pays a lot of attention to what goes on the internet. He literally will reply to people on Twitter with like 15 followers sometimes, so he takes that into consideration. Whether that's a good or a bad thing, that's depending on your opinion. But the fact that it's been put out there by a wrestling site, that's a good thing. So definitely exciting. I personally would love to see you there. If you are there, I will start watching the show weekly to support you. I tried watching the show, and I will watch certain pay-per-views, certain matches from certain pay-per-views I'll be intrigued by and I'll watch. But just like weekly watching is very difficult for me. Right now, I'm just watching JCW. That's about an hour and 20, hour and 30 every Thursday night on YouTube. And, focuses a lot on storytelling, Vince Russo, Crash TV, Jerry Springer style, lots of wacky storylines, lots of quick matches and stuff. And I like that personally. I could always appreciate a slower, methodical match, but usually for me, save those matches for the pay-per-views, for the big events, the payoffs. My ideal match time when I'm watching, for me to be tuning in 100% and not being distracted on my phone, 5 to 12 minutes, I think, is a good length, depending on the story you're trying to tell. I mean, for you, what's your ideal length of a match? I mean, from your perspective, wrestling a match.
I mean, as a wrestler, if we're in the mood for it and we have a good storyline coming into a match, we tend to always want more time. That being said, there's plenty of times when, like, if I show up to an indie and it's just some random one-off match with some guy, and where match number 4 on the card, and they say, "Oh yeah, you guys have 20 minutes." We'll be like, "We're not going 20. Let's do 15. Let's do 12." But at the same time, it's kind of like when the more time you have, the more of a complex story you could create, the more of your cool stuff you could do, the more potential there is for like complex false finishes. So a lot of times you do want more time, but that being said, there's also the element where there's plenty of times where like I'm on a show where like everyone has gone long and I could see the crowd like starting to get exhausted, and I'm like, we have like, oh, they told us we could have 15. I'm like, dude, I think we should just go out there and be done in 10 minutes. Like I think the more we don't mess around, no gaga in the beginning, let's not take our time with this, that, the other, and just stay action packed. That's going to light up the crowd, and that's going to be what they want, and it's going to serve us a lot better. So there's pros and cons to both approaches. So it really just depends on the context.
So let me ask you something about that, because you mentioned that you noticed what the crowd was like during that one situation and you kind of adjusted on the fly. And the way you describe it, it's almost like you're putting the show as a whole ahead of you, Alex Hammerstone, the wrestler. Is that just a mentality that you personally have? Is that just something that you do? Or is that like something that's shared by most people in the locker room where they're going to prioritize the event, the brand, the company over themselves? Or is it like a person-to-person kind of situation?
Bro, it really, I think it's a maturity thing for like a lot of wrestlers, because like a lot of wrestlers, like they come into matches and it's like their mindset of like what they're trying to do, like all they're thinking about is like the moves they want to do. Like that's literally it, and it's like sometimes like people really do not understand like what's going to get like certain responses. Like there's been time, I don't know. Have you ever heard like what the typical breakdown of how a match goes?
I have a general idea, but by all means, break it down.
So, man, this is really pulling back the curtain, but like you could find this anywhere. This is explained on so many things, but like they'll typically say there's like sections of a match, and roughly it's something like establish the babyface and the heel, shine up the babyface, cut off the babyface, work the heat where the heel is in charge of the match, and beating up the babyface to make the crowd want to see the babyface get his comeback. So the next part of the match would be the comeback, where rah, now the babyface is finally fighting back, some false finishes, and then the finish. That's like roughly generic structure of a match. That being said, that's not how you should approach every single match. And obviously there's a million ways to, kind of flip the script. But I'll just say, for example, there's been places where like someone's like, what are we doing here? And I'm like, what do you want to do for your shine? And I'm like, I think just come in and like cut me off from the beginning and let's do that. And they're like, okay, but then what are you gonna do for a shine? I'm like, dude, I don't need a shine in this match. The shine in the match is what's supposed to get the babyface over with the crowd. But in theory, if the babyface is already over with the crowd, you don't need to do that part. So like there was like it was one of the Transformers movies. I don't remember which one, but I remember I always referenced it talking to people. And I'm like, man, some wrestlers should watch this movie, because the Transformers start in heat and they take heat for like 60 minutes before they get any kind of shine and comeback, because there had already been 4 or 5 Transformers movies. So you don't need to spend the first 20 minutes of the movie making you like these characters and making you know they're badass and can fight, because they've done that already. So if you watch, I can't think of the years it was, but it wasn't in his latest run, but there was a couple years where a lot of John Cena matches were like that. Like he would just get beat up, like right, almost from the get go, and then until he ran his comeback, because it's John Cena. Like the sooner you see him in trouble getting beat up, the sooner you're gonna like itch for him to like start fighting back. And especially if you didn't get anything in the beginning of the match, you're like, you almost feel cheated, and you're like, come on, John, do something. But it's like, you don't need to establish him as the good guy, and you don't need to like spend time getting him over with the crowd. He's done that for the last 15 years, you know? So a lot of wrestlers aren't able to see things like that, you know? And then like, you know, another easy example would be like one of these baby faces who has like a really cool, elaborate entrance. Like that's like takes a bunch of time, and like the crowd interacts with it a lot. I'm like, that could be their shine. They don't need to come in the match and then start the match rocking and rolling, because for the last 3 minutes on the way to the ring, all the crowd was like, yeah, we love this guy. So like, if he gets in the ring and immediately starts getting his ass kicked, you're still gonna root for him. You're not gonna think like, oh man, this guy's a bitch. You know, you're like, this guy's cool. Like, let's see what he can do. You know.
So it sounds like you have your basic script more or less, but then you kind of adjust on the fly. Like you mentioned, there's different variables and situations where you can kind of adjust it on the fly. So that's very interesting. Peeling the curtain here on the High Stim Experience. We got a comment from our buddy Roy Sanchez. He says it's already been done with Wardlow, but bringing Hammer in as MJF's bodyguard right now would be dope as hell. Just don't book it like Batista Evolution route. It's been done to death.
Who knows? You know, Max is a good friend of mine, man. We have a lot of history together, so never say never. But you know,
I would love to see that, man. Wardlow also, I remember I was watching clips of AEW at the time. I still do that to this day because I'm still a wrestling fan deep down inside. So even if I can't bear to sit through a 2.5, 3 hour show with all the filler and everything, like if I know something happened on Raw or SmackDown or AEW that's generating buzz, like obviously MJF won the title, right? Like I'm going to watch the segments leading up to it on YouTube. You know, there's so many great YouTube channels that will even compile certain things together, and they'll do such a great job on it. Do you remember the feud they had with Tony Storm and Mariah May like a year and a half ago on AEW, and like, you know, with the blood and everything? There was somebody on YouTube. I'm going to send you this video. It was probably like an hour and 20 minutes for the entire thing, maybe even longer. I don't remember, but I watched the entire thing in one sitting. It was basically the entire feud in order, you know, just skimming around the matches, obviously due to copyright reasons and also to try to keep the video short. But you basically got the greatest hits of every match. But the storyline that went along with it was so fascinating. I was glued to the screen. And even I get a little queasy when I see girls bleeding. I'm really not into that. But it was different. It was unique. And there was the whole feeling of betrayal, you know, when she freaking turned on her and hit her with that freaking, with the heel. Oh my God, that was crazy shit. But my point is that, you know, these YouTube compilations, a lot of them will do a really great job. So I still love to keep up with stuff. You know, MJF, I'm a huge fan of his. I think he's super talented. I think if he went to WWE, they would nerf the hell out of him. They would neuter him, and, you know, he wouldn't be able to play the character nowhere near as deep as AEW. So again, pros and cons, no matter where you are. Another comment from Roy. He says, those zombies in JCW are insane, bro. They work the movements well into their matches. Have you seen these guys? Have you seen them yet?
No.
I have to send you some clips, man. I have a bunch of stuff I have to send you for homework. These guys are incredible, man. Abel and Jackson, they literally have the whole zombie getup, and the whole joke is that they identify as zombies, right? Like on JCW, they make a lot of fun of like a lot of this modern crap, you know, the SGW woke culture. Like they make a lot of fun of that stuff in general with backstage segments and stuff. So it's kind of like breaking the fourth wall a little bit. So these guys aren't zombies; they identify as zombies, you know, but they are so committed. Like they come out just like freaking walking like that, and they incorporate it into their work. And based on how they look like they're young. They can't be older than like 25, 26. You know, they look very young, and they have a manager with them who his name is escaping me at the moment. Barnabas, bro. This guy looks like a freaking circus carny from the 1800s. You know, has that fancy shiny green outfit. His beard is colored like black and white in the middle. He has a twirly mustache. Where's the little glasses, dude? The guy is a straight up like a comic book villain, but he comes out, he's the mouthpiece, and he introduces them. You know, he makes it look like a spectacle, like an act, and then they come out being zombies and shit. Dude, it is freaking amazing, and it's so entertaining. I gotta send you these guys, man. In general, they're doing a lot of shit. I know I'm talking a lot about JCW, and obviously I have a bit of a bias. I'm a Vince Russo fan, but still, the show has been such a breath of fresh air to me. I literally look forward to every Thursday night. I'm enjoying the hell out of it. It's just been so much fun to watch. Yeah, and even Mr. G2 says, I just started watching JCW after Ace mentioned it. I think it's going to get a lot bigger. So far, they've been growing the YouTube numbers. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, you look at the numbers, it's a joke compared to, AEW or WWE. They're getting like 35, 40,000 views in about a span of a week. But they have two advantages. One, that when they first started, they were barely breaking 10K. So if you look at it from that perspective, that's a 300% increase since Vince Russo started writing. But the other thing that works in their benefit, on YouTube, no matter what you upload, even in our case, uploading reviews and stuff, once it's on there, it's on there. It's considered evergreen content. People could come back to it in a year, 2 years, 3 years, and watch it, and the views will rack up over time, So I think their goal is to eventually get some sort of streaming deal, and I think they will. I think they just have to hit the hammer while it's hot, because right now a lot of people are unhappy with WWE, and I know JCW is very niche and no one's like really heard of it, but there is a bit of a buzz coming around, even from a lot of these wrestling websites that I follow, the dirt sheets or whatever. Whether they post something positive or negative doesn't matter. The fact is, JCW is out there right now. People are talking about it. So even when people are checking it out and they're seeing, oh my God, they're doing something different over here that they're not doing in WWE. And yeah, the production value is low budget and they're working with what they have, but it's different. It's interesting. It's intriguing. Bro, you have a character on the show named Cocaine who snorts fucking cocaine. I mean, for God's sake, it's so entertaining. The guy's literally getting his ass handed in a match. He's in a chokehold and he rips out a baggie and just freaking pours the powder all over himself, and then gets his freaking second coming or whatever. What do you call that? The comeback?
The comeback.
The comeback, and he's like hopped up on cocaine. Bro, there was a segment with Big Vito who's like playing an enforcer character. He plays like the Don Italian mafia enforcer character. He's drug testing this guy Cocaine, and he's taking him to the bathroom and leaving him by the stall and walking away. And this dude's literally about to take a bump of cocaine before peeing into the cup. And his friend comes in and he's like, no, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? Don't do that. It's silly stuff, man, but it's entertaining. Obviously, like I said, I will always appreciate a good wrestling match. But if you're just doing match after match after match after match, and there's no room to breathe, there's no stories, there's no emotional investment for me, I'm eventually not going to care. I will always appreciate the workers and respect the matches, but there needs to be some emotional investment, even if you look at TV shows and movies and stuff, take Rocky, for example. You ever watch the Rocky movies?
Hell yeah, I watch Rocky movies.
Stupid question, I know. But like, imagine you take away all the storylines, right? Like you don't focus on any of the stories and it's just the matches. No one's going to give a shit, So it's the same concept with that. Bro, I'm due for a Rocky marathon rewatch, by the way. It's been a little while.
I don't know if I could convince Courtney to watch those, but we did over like quarantine times. We went through like this phase of watching like all the classic 80s like action movies and stuff, and like she had never seen any of the Terminator movies. We watched all those. We watched Predator. We watched a lot of good stuff, man.
Rocky is so amazing, and I was surprised because I watched the first one with my girl, and I didn't know if she was going to be into it or not, but she loved the hell out of that movie, and we ended up watching, the next couple of movies. I think 4 is my favorite. That's with Ivan Drago. Yeah, that's the crazy one. But a really underrated one is Rocky Balboa Part 6. That one is super, super underrated, in my opinion.
I haven't even seen it. You brought up something that I don't think... you're talking about this cocaine character. I don't think you know this. Like MLW for a while back, like right now they're just streaming stuff on YouTube, but in the early days we had a TV program, so there was a lot more backstage stuff and a lot more vignettes. Like we used to fly out like a whole day early or stay a whole day extra, where we'd go to locations and film stuff, and there was a lot more, content beyond the matches than there is right now. And especially during that like dynasty time, we did so many jokes about me being gassed up. There was a part where like there was a show we did in Mexico. And like we were legitimately in Mexico, and we're all walking out of the pharmacy, and like they walk up to interview us, like, "What are you guys doing in the pharmacy?" and they were just like, oh, we're just getting Gatorade or whatever, and then I had this big bag, and I'm like, well, and they're like, shut up, and I was like, it's legal here. It's like there was just like, and then like I even had they released a T-shirt for me. That was because like one of the lines I dropped at some point was like calling myself like the master of Muscle Mountain, and they made a T-shirt where the graphic was kind of like Muscle Mountain was like a theme park ride, and they made like this fake theme park, and there was all these shops, and one of them was the Farmacia de Mexico. It had like little like syringes on it, and like people like didn't even catch some of this stuff, like, but it was like obviously there's like fans who are always like, this guy's on steroids, so we just like ran with it and made jokes about it all the time. It was like stuff you could never get with the WWE.
For sure, man, for sure. And that's, the fact that they're publicly traded. And I mean, I think they're still PG technically, right? They never went back to TV-14, did they?
Yeah, but I feel like that line is blurred so much now, as far as like what content is acceptable where, like freaking it's all over the place,
Yeah, because you don't have network restrictions like you did back in the day. Plus, they're on Netflix already for like a year. So, yeah, no, it makes sense when you put it that way. Because sometimes the stuff is very childish, but then sometimes, they have the divas there basically like half naked all over each other, So, yeah, it's interesting. We have a question here, or rather a comment from Roy, and this was actually two topics we wanted to get into, so the timing is perfect. He says the match MJF won the title in was insane. Swerve and Hangman were killing it. You guys catch Tanahashi's retirement? That was killing me this morning. LOL, stayed up till 4:30 a.m. Wow. Shouts out to you. That's crazy, bro. So yeah, that's actually two things we wanted to talk about. We wanted to talk about MJF winning the title and Tanahashi. We're going to touch upon it. So let's talk about MJF first. Did you catch the match or the highlights or anything from it?
I haven't. I'm really excited to watch it. I'm actually been during my last couple cardio sessions. I've been watching a couple of the big AEW matches, like trying to find them in full. I watched MJF versus Will Ospreay during cardio this morning, but I haven't caught that 4-way match yet. No.
Bro, MJF is amazing. He's young. He's probably under 30, right?
Yeah, I think he might have just turned 30, but I think he's under 30 still.
Yeah, I think so too, like 28 or 29, but he is extremely talented, man. I mean, he's had some incredible feuds. I love what he did with Jericho. That was a little while ago, but I really love what he did with Jericho. And I don't know, there's just something about him. He gets it. He understands how to commit to the bid, even in a modern day where there's all these dirt sheets and news and social media. One thing that drives me crazy, and it's a little nitpick, I know people care about the social media growth and stuff, but when you're on a company like WWE or AEW nationwide and you have a certain character, when you go out there and post social media pics and you're tagging people and you're 100% the opposite of what you are on TV, it irks me, man. I'll give you an example. When they brought back the Wyatt family or the Wyatt Six, whatever they called them, I was a huge Bray Wyatt fan. Everybody knows I love Bray Wyatt. I think he was genius, and they didn't utilize him nearly as well as they could have. But when they brought him back, when they brought them back, meaning Bo Dallas as the Uncle Howdy character, and they did that whole thing. There was intrigue there for a couple of weeks, and they did a great job. I mean, Bo Dallas he crushed it, man. It was emotional. It was from the heart. It was blurring the line of fiction and reality, and you could tell there was a lot of pain there. Which is why that first promo he did on that VHS tape was incredible. I live for moments like that, man. I love that kind of stuff when I'm watching wrestling, It's real, it's raw, it's emotional, and it adds to the entire feeling of the show. But my point is, after they started doing these character introductions and they're coming with their masks and whatnot, bro, they posted a picture, or rather, I think it was someone from a diner that posted a picture with the entire crew. They were there. I forgot if it was the Denny's or some local diner or whatever, but they were all there, like half in costume. They had the masks off, but they still had the gear. And they all posed and smiled with this guy, which I get it. That was a cool thing to do for a fan, but at the same time, it really exposes everything. You're building this supernatural aura. Like, imagine back in the day, Kane, and The Undertaker are having their feud with all the shit. You're supposed to believe Undertaker burnt Kane's parents alive, and, now he wants to kill him. And imagine Kane's taking selfies somewhere,
Yeah. there was this weird freaking trend for a while. It was around like the COVID quarantine time, and I think it was just people freaking bored and whatever. But it was like edgy to like completely shit on kayfabe at all. Like I get it, dude. Like no wrestling fans don't think wrestling's real, but it's like you said, you still want to be able to let yourself be pulled into the story. Like I think Jim Cornette says it. It's like, yeah, like kayfabe might be dead, but you don't have to like pull out the corpse and piss on it. You know, like you could still like respectfully, you know, work with it in a mature way. But there was like this weird trend where like a couple wrestlers like would not only like completely pull back the curtain and like talk openly, but they would a couple wrestlers had like switched their Twitter names to their real name, and then it would like be like so and so, or it would be like their wrestler name played by, and then their real name, like completely saying like, you know, I don't even want to say my real name, but it's like saying like, you know, Hammerstone as played by, you know, whatever. I was like, this is so corny, but they thought they were being like edgy and cool. But I was like, you're just being dumb. Like, shut up. If you don't want to like, if you're gonna treat it like that, like, do something else, man.
But this is why JCW, I'm telling you again, is such a breath of fresh air, because these characters are really in their character. You know, there's this other character there, man, that's super, super entertaining. Too Tough Tony. You ever heard of Too Tough Tony?
I'm not.
He's a veteran. I mean, he's not in like amazing shape or anything. He's been there for many years. You could tell. I mean, the guy looks like he's at least in his mid to late 40s, you know? So I'm sure he's been there for a while. But he basically plays the drunk character. You know, he literally comes out. He's like the cool drunk uncle, you know? He comes out. He literally has a bottle of lemon Bacardi with him every single week. And he'll sip on it. And then he'll go around the entire ring and give people little swigs of it, you know? And he has like a whole cool entrance. And he's like the hopped up uncle. You know, he may not be in the best shape anymore or whatever. He may not look like a wrestler, but he's going to get drunk. He's going to fight. He's going to do his best. He has a cool finisher too. He pours a little bit of the Bacardi on his fist, lights it on fire, and boom, you know, which is, yeah, it's pretty freaking crazy. You have to be a little drunk to do that. But my point is that you really, you know, they really take the character work seriously. And I'm sure a lot of it has to do with Russo and his style of writing, because I listen to his podcast regular, and he's been talking about this stuff for years, man. Like now that he's with Coach and Bro, like they're doing their Coach and Bro podcast with Jonathan Coachman, you know, he's getting more mainstream now because that show is growing very quickly. But I've been listening to his personal podcast Behind the Paywall for 11, going on 12 years already. So like this is stuff he's been talking about. If anything, he's more consistent than anybody, you know, and that's why I like him. Because a lot of people, you know, and people I respect, you know, Eric Bischoff, Jim Cornette, I listen to those guys as well, but they will change their opinion with the way the wind blows at that certain moment. You know, Russo, love him or hate him, he's always been on that same, you know, narrative that he says. So it's very, very, very interesting. But I wanted to talk about Tanahashi also, because admittedly, I don't watch Japanese wrestling. You know, I've seen clips. But I thought it would be interesting to hear your perspective, because you've wrestled in Japan. As a matter of fact, the very first the interview we did before we even had the High Stim Experience, you were telling me some crazy stories about Japan, and that was probably my favorite part of the interview because it was not planned. But you just started talking about Japan, and me being a big fan of Japan and wrestling, we started talking about the whole culture and how it's a little bit different than what Americans are used to when it comes to pro wrestling. But tell me a little bit about Tanahashi. I don't know if you ever wrestled him or not, but I know for sure you've heard of him. I mean, he was a legend in New Japan.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't have any like personal experience, you know, with him. Like he's one of the guys I never crossed paths with. But like, you know, it's funny, like in one of my group chats this morning, I got really my only group chat, but we were talking about it, and we were just like, I'm glad that he's retiring, because like one of the things was like, man, it's crazy that Tanahashi's retiring. He hasn't been able to walk for like 5 years now, and it's like, yeah, man, like the guy's just like, he just kept going and going, and it's like some of these people, like who was freaking the Great Muda, like you'd see him in matches and you're like, wow, this guy, like, he can still go at his age. But dude, he would be backstage like walking and like look like he was about to freaking fall, like he was like could barely walk. So that, and then you'd get in the ring and he'd still be able to perform and like cover it up to the point where you're like, man, this guy could still go, but it's like he shouldn't be. And like I remember when he like was getting dressed, he took off like he was took off he undressed. His legs were so like it looked like a cartoon how fucked up they were. And then he's like taping his knees like with like rolls of tape to just like keep them like from buckling, and then it's like braces and this and that, and then tape on the ankles, and it's just like, dude, like, so Tanahashi, I know his body has just suffered a lot, so and he's got a legendary career, it's like, what more can you do at this point? Like, that's why it's like AJ Styles has said he's like planning to retire this year or next year. Like, that's awesome, because he's had a legendary career, but he hasn't stayed around long enough for anyone to be like, that's not AJ Styles, Obviously, he's not doing this same like crazy stuff. Like, if you watch an AJ Styles match from 10 years ago, he's going to be doing a lot of different stuff that he doesn't do anymore. But in the same breath, it's not like you watch him now and you're like, this guy, that's, he's still able to go at a very high, respectable level. And sometimes guys cross that line, like fucking Ric Flair retiring 3 times. And it's like, by that last freaking match, like, I have all the respect in the world for Ric Flair. Like, don't twist my words, but he had no business. Like, there was no point to that. Like, and I'm sure if he could have a freaking another retirement match, he would, in
a heartbeat.
So it's like, but it's like, when you're watching that, if you don't know who Ric Flair is, you're like, this is stupid. Like, what the heck is this? Whereas when you watch like AJ Styles' final match, even if you've never seen wrestling, it's going to be an awesome wrestling match. Speaking of Japan, there was one of the shows I went to when I was there was like a Legends show where it was like all these like veteran wrestlers who were like just been around forever, and some of it was freaking embarrassing, man. Like, literally senior citizens who could barely get in and out of the ring, going in there and having wrestling matches, and you can only imagine like what it looked like, and it's like the crowd is cheering along with them to support and to show respect, but at the same time it's like, come on, like, I think if you're like, if you take a match like and you don't know the context of it, like you don't know, like, this guy used to be this, like, a match should be able to hold on its own without having to explain all these caveats to make you go, oh okay, then it's okay. You know what I'm saying?
I think that is why they made The Undertaker's final match, which was against AJ Styles, they made it like a semi-cinematic match, kind of like what the Hardys did when they were in TNA. They had their, final deletion and all that stuff. Like, that stuff was freaking amazing, bro. That was so incredible. But I think that's why they did it, because Undertaker couldn't even wrestle at that level. And I remember listening to a Vince Russo podcast years ago, and similarly to what you were telling me about the Great Muta just now, he talked about when the Undertaker used to come backstage, he would almost collapse right then and there. He's out there in the ring, bro. He's giving it 150%. He never missed a beat. But then when he came backstage, he told me that, the paramedics, the ice packs, the freaking heating pads, and like, he was always in pain, wobbling around. It's crazy. A lot of people don't realize how much pro wrestlers sacrifice for entertainment. So thank you, to you and to everybody else who, put your bodies on the line for entertaining the masses. Really, people don't say it enough, but really it's incredible. And there's a sense of pride that comes with it. I know you have your sense of pride, just the amount of work you put in the gym. You're always posting stories. You don't stray off your diet like I do, unfortunately. But you're disciplined. It's an entire lifestyle you got to commit to maintain a certain level. And then when you get to a certain age, even if you maintain the healthiest lifestyles, age is going to be a factor no matter what. What was that quote you said? You can't escape father time, right?
Yeah. Father time comes for us all.
Exactly. So, you see examples with Ric Flair, and yeah, that last match was tough to watch. I watched it, and yeah, it was a tag team match, but it was sad to watch, and I can only imagine when you're at that level, you're at a Hulk Hogan level, Ric Flair level, and then suddenly you're not there in front of the crowd getting the adoration of the fans. I could see that being depressing, and that's why people want to hold on to the spotlight, even in different sports, in the NBA and NFL and whatever. They try to hold on to the spotlight as often as possible, because then it's difficult to let go. So a lot of people end up transitioning over to different roles, like Tom Brady became an announcer. A lot of times you go into podcasting, which thank God that there's a huge market for podcasts. And, a lot of times people joke, they say, oh, another wrestler made their own podcast. But it's like, you know what? I don't care. That's a good thing. And I don't have to watch every single episode. I'll tune in to Kurt Angle once in a while. Jim Ross, I still listen to once in a while. Cornette, Bischoff, whoever it is, let them continue making living. And especially wrestlers that put their body on the line, like Kurt Angle. I mean, my God, what he's been through in his career. So the fact that he could continue still making money off of all that experience that he has in the wrestling industry, but he doesn't have to put his body on the line anymore. He can do a podcast. That's freaking incredible, man. And I'm super happy about that they have that option.
Yeah. So, I just remembered this. So since you said you watched his last match, there's been very few times in my entire career where I missed a show because of a flight getting delayed or canceled too far to where I wasn't going to make it. But the Ric Flair retirement show was one of those shows. I was booked for that show. And
no way.
I didn't get to wrestle on it because the flight got it was supposed to be like the night before, and then it got like delayed, and then it was gonna be a red eye, and then it got canceled and then pushed to the next morning. And then they were like, yeah, if like it basically got to the point where it was like, yeah, if you're gonna miss like you won't be here in time, like you could probably still see some of the show if you get on this flight. But and at that point I had been sitting at the airport for like 9 hours, and I'm like, God, I'm going home.
Just the amount of bullshit that wrestlers have to endure with the airport, already got to give them respect for that, because I freaking fly very, very few times in my life. I try to actively avoid it as much as possible. I hate flying. And just the fact that to you it's like a normal thing that you deal with every couple of weeks or whatever, or every week, if you're booked on a weekly show, that's crazy. All the respect in the world to you for that. It's freaking nuts. Let's see. We got another question here from Mr. G, or rather a comment. He said, I heard Vince ruined the OG Wyatt family because he wanted total control and didn't want them supernatural, and it upset Bray Windham Rotunda. What do you make of that?
I mean, I could see like some extent of that, like it's hard because some, like, I think Bray Wyatt was probably such a big picture like long length storyteller, where he came up with this complex story that was like, here's what I want to do over the next year. And then if you present that, and then Vince goes, hey, yeah, okay, but this part right here, we're not going to do that. We're not doing that. But it's like, okay, but if we don't do that, then this part doesn't make any sense, so we can't get there. And then the next thing you know, like, you're 3 weeks into it, and then he goes, oh, never mind, we're going to change course and go this direction. And the next thing you know, the whole thing starts falling apart and doesn't make sense. And then wrestlers get jaded, and then it's hard, man. It's hard when it comes to the creative side of this. Like, if you're one of those wrestlers who really thinks about stuff like that beyond just like, I want to go have cool matches, like it can be really frustrating at times,
Bro, WWE doesn't have consistency week to week, let alone thinking 5, 6 months down the line, a year down the line. So I could definitely see it being an issue if he's a big picture kind of guy. And I believe that he was, But again, you were talking a couple of weeks ago on a previous episode where people today, they don't have that attention span to think about the full story. People want that instant gratification. So if something big isn't happening right now, it's like, wow, I don't care. I'm not invested. But really, when you're telling a long form story, wrestling is an episodic show, for the shows that do have TV deals, and there's no off seasons. So you got to kind of do a long form story, but at least let it progress a little bit every week. Obviously you can't have like crazy payoffs right away. You got to let it build, but it's the attention span today. Everything just no one has attention spans in this day and age. Ace, ask Alex about the 450-pound wrestler he just slammed in a match. I saw that. You posted that as a story, right?
Yeah.
Well, that training paying off.
That dude's awesome, man. I've always had fun experiences wrestling him, man. I remember the first time I wrestled him in a singles match. I remember thinking like the promoter, thinking it was a rib, because I was like, man, what can you do in a match with this guy? Like, he's so heavy, he could barely freaking probably move. He's gonna get, whatever. And then we put a match together, and he freaking killed it, and it was awesome. I had such a fun time wrestling him. Obviously, he's limited in what he can do at that size, but at the same time, freaking for how big he is, and like me thinking like, oh my god, this guy's gonna be so blown up and this and that. Like, obviously he's not working the same pace as someone half his size, but he's a very impressive guy, man. Funny story. I don't know if he'd want me telling this story, but we did a show, and we're staying at this. The promoter booked all the out of town guys at the same hotel, and it was like this, cheap little whatever hotel. He sat on the toilet and it broke. And,
my god!
The whole toilet broke, and we had to go to the front and the front desk and be like, hey, and they thought like, oh, someone was roughhousing in the bathroom. Like, nah, dude, that guy's 450 pounds, man, and you have a cheap fucking ceramic toilet.
Oh my god! Did you have to pay for it? What ended up happening?
No, they were super apologetic and got him a new room.
Okay, so at least it had a happy ending there. Yeah. All right, so we got 2 more topics, man, because we were just kind of freeballing it. We ended up talking about trading card games for a while and a bunch of other nerdy.
Let's hope we have some Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh fans that ended up watching.
Bro, when I meet you in person, whenever it's going to be where I'm going to come out to Arizona, I'll teach you how to play Yu-Gi-Oh, and you will teach me how to play Magic the Gathering. I am so down to learn how to play Magic the Gathering. Obviously, beginner decks and stuff. We have a comment from Terminal Boba right there. That's Sandshrew. I recognize Sandshrew. I know the OG Pokemon. I love Pokemon TCG. Yeah. So that's an earlier comment. So that's probably when we were talking about the cards and stuff. But yes, we have 2 more topics we have to officially touch upon. And let's finish off with the pro wrestling. And we have Chris Jericho, who apparently his contract expired with AEW, and he hasn't wrestled there since the beginning of 2025. Like March or April was the last time he wrestled, and he's kind of been away from public spotlight, but people have been saying that he lost a lot of weight. People that saw him at Fozzy shows and whatever and pictures, they said he lost a lot of weight, is in good shape, and there's a lot of rumors that he will be joining WWE, whether it's in the Royal Rumble or whatever. If that does come to fruition, first of all, tell me, do you think that is likely to happen? And secondly, if he does come back, in what capacity do you see him coming back? Is he going to be a manager? Is he going to be like a part-time wrestler and they're going to do like a little retirement tour for him? Now that Cena's gone, maybe the next year they'll do the Jericho retirement tour. What do you think?
I think, I hope that he is coming back. I think it would be nice to see Chris Jericho finish his run in WWE and be inducted in the Hall of Fame and all of that stuff. He's without question a Hall of Famer. And I forget if he's gone on record saying he doesn't care about if he gets in the Hall of Fame or whatever, but I think at the when he's looking back on his wrestling career and he's way past all of it, he's gonna want that. So I really hope that I would selfishly like to see that. I definitely think he's going to come back in a wrestling role, and I think it is going to be kind of like a 1 or 2 year contract where it is working towards his retirement, but I don't think it'll be like the spotlight emphasis of like the Cena type thing, where it's like this is the final year of Jericho. Like I think it will just kind of be like um, he'll be signed for whatever, and then when the last match is coming, they might make a spectacle of it. But I think that's how it'll go. But um, the first ever WWE event I ever went to as a fan was when Royal Rumble was in Arizona, and it was Chris Jericho was the surprise return.
Wow.
And I remember I had just freaking like started wrestling, so I was still in training. I don't think I had my first match, and I went with a couple of the other wrestlers who had been like they weren't like established guys, but they had wrestled matches a little while. And there's this one guy who like took it like way too seriously. And I remember I'm in the crowd, and I think it was um like a thing. I think there was like a storyline where like Dolph Ziggler had like done something to Jericho, which like led to his long hiatus or whatever. I could be wrong, but I think it was like Dolph. The first two get like kind of like legit entrances because the match hasn't like started to where there's like the countdown.
Yeah.
I think the first entrant was Ziggler, and I think the second was Jericho. And I stood up out of my seat. I was freaking, oh my god, yeah, yeah, I'm cheering. And then the freaking one of the guys was like, "Stop acting like a mark." And I'm like, shut up, come on, dude, like have some freaking fun. But yeah, so for him to return at this Rumble would be super cool, man.
Dude, I've always been a huge fan of Jericho. He's one of my favorites from the Attitude Era. When he came over from WCW, went straight after The Rock. That's the way you do it, man. You introduce him like that. It was incredible. And that was Vince Russo writing during that time. Him and Jericho actually did a couple of podcasts together. I think it's been a while since their last show, but it was a very, very good show. And I've always enjoyed it. I mean, hell, WrestleMania 19, one of my favorite WrestleManias ever, Jericho versus Shawn Michaels, man, and that match felt so personal. Jericho's an amazing freaking heel, and he's also a good babyface, because he's rock and roll, he's cool, he's hip, he's a little silly. So he's always been a fun babyface, but he really shines as a heel, man, especially with his cocky attitude, when he was doing the stuff with Kevin Owens. I hope, by the way, they're going to do a little bit of the list stuff because that was always entertaining for me, even amidst the shitty, boring WWE show. Those little segments he had with Owens were really, really solid.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll see. Time will tell. When is the Royal Rumble has got to be in just a couple weeks, right?
Is that the one that's being done from Saudi Arabia this year, or am I mixing it up?
I have no clue, man. I'm freaking a little bit more out of touch than I should be.
But I think I could be wrong, but I think this year they're doing Royal Rumble in Saudi Arabia, and then next year they're doing WrestleMania there, and then the rumor goes that they're probably going to sell to Saudi Arabia after, which, like, that's a whole other topic for another episode because we could literally spend an entire episode discussing that and the cultural impact that would have on the product, but that'd be crazy. But yeah, I would love to see Jericho back in WWE. He's 55 years old, he's no spring chicken, but he's always been in good shape and he works relatively safe. So especially now, just like AJ Styles toned it down a little bit, I'm sure he would tone it down. One final thing though, if he does come back, do you think that he would come back with his classic Y2J theme, or do you see him coming back with Judas?
I think he has to, bro. The countdown theme is freaking too good. He's got to come back to that. He's got to, man.
What if they do the countdown and then it transitions over to Judas? I think that would be pretty cool.
I don't know, man. Nothing that break the walls down for me, brother.
Fair point. What were you gonna say? I'm sorry I cut you off.
I don't even know. I think
right.
my head's kind of loopy right now.
That's all good, brother. When Edge came back after the neck injury, the huge pop was huge. Yo, when Edge came back, that was freaking crazy. And that's another one, by the way, another wrestler that I freaking love and adore. Edge is incredible, man. Rated R superstar. The way he reinvented himself after being a tag team wrestler for so many years and successfully did it at that and became even more well known for that. Freaking amazing, man. I still keep thinking what would have happened with the Judgment Day faction in WWE had Edge continued to run it and it was going in a dark direction. He had Damian Priest with him, who another freaking character that the WWE dropped the ball on numerous times. I mean, just freaking look at the guy, superstar written all over him, and they freaking have him as a mid-carder. But him and Rhea Ripley together, they were starting something dark, and then, you know, the whole turn happened because he was leaving the company, and it always makes me wonder, in like an alternate reality timeline, where would have the faction gone if Edge was the leader and had like this dark, edgy tone to it?
You just made me think of like a complete side tangent, but it might be something a little bit fun to talk about. People might find this interesting. Literally, you bringing up Rhea Ripley made me think about this. But have I ever talked to you? So you know the WWE games, right?
What was that?
Do you know the WWE video games?
Oh yeah, I used to play them. Yeah, sure.
So you know how like they do motion capture with like people to like program all those games and do all the moves. You know, I've done that for a couple of them, right?
Really? No, I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
So a couple of the moves in the game, like I the Nightmare Pendulum in the game is me doing it.
Wow, that's cool.
But
I had no idea.
When you brought up Rhea Ripley, it made me think of this maybe not the latest game, but maybe like from 2 years ago or something. They had like a WrestleMania version of the game where there was like these, you could like redo like these like big WrestleMania matches from the past.
I remember. I remember that.
It was like really cool because like there'd be parts of the like you'd control the match, but then there'd be parts of the match where like you'd like trigger a segment where it would do an exact spot from the match, and it would like cut between the video game and the actual footage and whatever. So they literally brought me in to do all of Hulk Hogan's stuff.
Wow.
So like I had to do like they had like TVs all around us with like the actual match, and we had to like do it spot for spot. Like it was really interesting. But one of the things that mocap does, and like I get it, dude. Like I think for like I have all the respect for women's wrestlers. I'm not trying to talk crap on women's wrestlers, but they try to have they always book girls to do the girls stuff, even though it's mocap, so it doesn't matter, right? And they had Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania as one of the big matches you could play, and they had booked these girls, but they could not freaking do this spot. And it's like normally it's like not a big deal because they're normally not doing a lot of actual wrestling. Like you're usually there to do like, hey, do this move or do the weird thing. Like there'll be entire days of mocap where they're just having like pick up different objects and put them down because like they need that programmed in the game. But for this, we had to do like long spots of matches, and the girls they booked could not do it. And so we were sitting there for like 2 hours. All the guys are just sitting on the edge with these girls are in the ring trying to do this one spot over and over and over, and they just can't. And like they're doing it, but it's so sloppy that it's not going to work for the mocap. Like they could not do it the way that Charlotte and Rhea did. And I could just see like the guy, like the director of like was getting so freaking frustrated. And finally, like we went on lunch break, and like while we're on break, he like pulled one of like the guys aside. He's like, I'm going to have you guys do that real quick before the girls come back.
Oh my God, that's great. That's a good story. So how's it work? Like when they contacted you, was it the WWE that contacted you to do the motion, or was the game company?
It's the game company, and it's very interesting. I believe I want to say he just reached out through Twitter. Maybe I got an email. Maybe it was through Twitter. I don't recall, but the guy who like runs that, he's like very active on social media, so he pays attention to a lot of guys. and he's very familiar with stuff. So like, there's even been times when I'm there and he's asking me about other people, like, hey, what do you think about this person? What do you think about that person? So yeah, but the freaking man, I feel like I'm just rambling with stories. But the first time I did it was over quarantine, like during COVID. So my first experience there sucked because we had to do so many freaking tests, and it like all the ways they did things was different. So I ended up doing it way later, and it was super fun and super cool. But that first time, we all had like separate trailers we had to go in, and they had all these crazy extra protocols because of COVID, because it's in California too, which is
yeah.
But I remember like on like the second day, I think it was only the second day, they I got to the building and immediately they were like, go to your trailer and take a test. And I'm like, okay. And like I go to the trailer and like, never mind, we're gonna have you rapid test. And I'm like, okay. And then they were like, never mind, go back to your car and sit in your car. I'm like, okay. So then we go to the car and they like came out and like we're sitting there for like 30 minutes and the whole building's empty. Like everyone's either outside or sitting in their cars. And finally the guy comes out and he's like, somebody tested positive for COVID. So we're shutting down this shoot. You're still going to get paid for the whole time, but we had to shut down the shoot. So the next three days are canceled or whatever. And then I'm like, okay, so can I fly home earlier? Like, no, we canceled everybody's flights and we booked your hotels for 2 weeks so you could quarantine. I'm like,
oh my God,
no freaking way. So this was like at a time when like I went to the grocery store and like in California, like they had like little like lines you had to go through to even shop for stuff. At the hotel, the gyms was closed. The water fountains were like taped off. Like everything was freaking shut down. I was like, I am not staying in this little freaking hotel for the next 2 weeks. So it was like in very northern California, and I was like, I'm going home. Like, well, we canceled your flight. I'm like, can I drive home? And they're like, I guess so. And because they got us rental cars to like go from the airport to the shoot, so they just switched it so that I could return the rental car in Arizona. And it was like a 13-hour drive. And I just like, as soon as they canceled it and we're like, I guess you can, I was like, all right. I just drove straight home, got home like late that night. It was freaking awful. But yeah, man, freaking wild.
That is crazy. And by the way, just so you know, feel free to ramble and tell as many stories as possible because you're only able to get it here on the High Stim Experience, and people are loving the stories, man. So absolutely freaking awesome. Man, COVID just feels like a fever dream, doesn't it? It feels like something that maybe I just dreamed up in a nightmare. And yeah, it's crazy. Everything's back to normal now, but the shit that we went through during that time in hindsight, and I mean, we could literally do an entire episode. I still think the whole thing was planned, and it was basically a test of compliance to see how much liberties people would be willing to give up to feel safe and secure. So I myself have so many stories regarding the vaccine, the card I had, and everything, because, I had to come up with a couple of stuff so I can get into certain places. The gyms would check those cards and everything. It was freaking crazy. But when people were talking about it originating from somebody eating bat soup, I'm like, you got to be a fucking idiot to believe that. We're literally, they've been eating bats and rats and snakes and monkeys in parts of the world for so many years. And you're telling me somebody ate bat soup in China and a worldwide pandemic started? You got to be out of your goddamn mind. I don't care if that bat had AIDS, man. It wouldn't have transferred to the entire world. It was freaking ridiculous. But that goes into the political territory, and I really don't want to talk about that on the show, but we can literally do an entire show about that because there's so much fuckery that went on during that time. It was crazy, man. I'm never going to forget the first time where they said you can go back to the gym, but they didn't specify exactly what the protocol would be. We just got the email. I was going to Planet Fitness at the time. They said you can come back to the gym now. So I'm heading to the gym, and I forgot what pre-workout I took that day, but I took it on my way to the gym. It had some Alpha-O in there. I was already like hopped up and ready to go, bro. I get to the gym. There is a line of like 60 people in front of me. They literally have this little clicker, and they're like allowing 2-3 people in at a time. When 2 people come out, 2 people go in, and so on and so forth. And I'm like hopped up on this freaking pre-workout, and I got to pee on top of all of it. And it's cold outside, and I got to wait in this line with like 60 freaking people. Bro. I was there for like 45 minutes. It was insane. Needless to say, I had a very shitty workout when I got in because it was already like kind of starting to taper off, you know, and oh my God. Yeah, but that was definitely crazy times, man. Crazy times.
Yep.
So we got our last topic, and we're going to end it off after this. We're going to talk a little bit about Stranger Things, a very big show, very popular on Netflix, and admittedly, we've talked about it a couple of times in the past. I've only watched the first season when it came out. I thought it was solid. I didn't think it was anything mind-blowing, but I liked it for what it was. Had that 80s nostalgia, you know. I thought it was a nice show and felt very self-contained to me. But then when they released season 2, I watched a little bit of it, maybe 5-6 episodes when it was on Netflix, and I don't know, it wasn't bad or anything, but it just felt like the story, like I was already satisfied with how the story ended in season 1, and I felt like they were just kind of looking for new things to continue, so I just dropped it at that point, never continued. But you mentioned that you and Courtney watched the show numerous times and rewatched it numerous times, and now the finale has aired, and even my coworker went to watch it in theaters. He said they aired the final episode in theaters, which is, you know, that's pretty cool. But basically it ended, and there's supposed to be a WWE collaboration also, I think, for tomorrow night's Monday Night Raw, which I think that's a good thing. I think anytime you get away from the monotony of just doing match after match after match, and if you're going to be teamed up with a brand that is very popular, especially because WWE's on Netflix, Stranger Things is on Netflix, so it makes sense for that collaboration. What they're going to do could be good, could be cheesy, we never know. But tell me a little bit about Stranger Things. Did you finish the show at all?
Yep. We just, like I said, New Year's, we started the series finale, and then I think we finished it, you know, the next day. Yeah, it's all done. It's all over. And, you know, there's a lot of reasons why it's like it lost something, you know, over the years, whether it's, you know, them, taking the story in directions of that's like, you know, whatever, maybe the show got too big for itself, where it's like it lost some of the charm it had. And then also just the fact that it took 10 years to give us 5 seasons, you know, so it's like you're losing something there. But yeah, like overall, like I didn't hate the ending, but like I wasn't like super, you know, intrigued and super into it. Like there was just a lot in this last season that just seemed so like it just not genuine. Like the characters would be having conversations, and I'm just like, this feels like a script. Like this doesn't feel like when you're watching a good movie or a good TV show, like you feel like you're watching real life interactions with people, you know. But this felt there was just so much of it that felt so performative, you know. And it was just like this, no one would ever have this conversation in real life like this, you know. It's just like,
so you know what show to me did something like that, and it's a completely different genre, but one of my favorite comedies of all time, and I really mean like top 2 or top 3. Have you ever watched Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
Yeah, we watched.
Okay.
Is it still going or no?
So let me get to it. All right.
Okay.
Always Sunny started off as a super low budget show. Literally the 4 guys with a camcorder. That was the freaking show, man. And even the conversations they had, it was all improv where they were just going with the flow. And the whole concept of the show is these 4 people are super, super low life losers that have nothing going on in their lives. But each one of them has like their own little quirk, their own little delusion. So you have Charlie, who's, you know, like super just as as low as they come, like a street rat essentially. Then you have Mac, who thinks he's like this buff macho guy. Meanwhile, he's a freaking wimp. And you have Dee Reynolds, right? That's Dennis's sister. And then Dennis, who's my favorite character, who's a straight up sociopath narcissist who thinks he's like this eloquent, high class golden god. Meanwhile, he's just as bad as the other schmucks in the group, But every episode is just about them coming up with schemes and ideas and stuff just to make a buck. And they will screw each other over in a heartbeat. They're supposedly best friends, but they will fuck each other over at a dime's notice because they're just pieces of shit. They're terrible people. Now, the show had that same low budget feel for probably the first 7-8 seasons, which is pretty impressive because they did get bigger. Even Danny DeVito joined in season 2. He literally watched the show on TV. He liked it. He called in and asked if he can join the show. And that's how he got on the show. They wrote him in as the father of Dee and Dennis, so that was great. And he added a whole other layer to the show. But then you could tell by seasons 8, 9, it became widescreen because it used to be at a 4:3 ratio or whatever it is. Then became 16:9 and the quality went up to HD and everything. But the interesting thing was that even up until seasons 11, it still maintained quality. It did feel a little bit more scripted. It didn't feel quite as off the cuff as those early seasons, but it still had that low budget feel, despite the fact that you could tell they're putting a lot more money into the production. But I don't know what it was. By season 12, they had a storyline which culminated in a 2-parter where the gang supposedly dies and meets God, but then you find out that that wasn't the case. I think they should have ended that show right then and there. I think they should have died, in a comedic way, the way they did on the show. And now they're just seeing God and reminiscing on their life. I think that's where they should have cut it, because the season after that, whether it was 12 or 13, it was one of those. Bro, the show went straight downhill, but nosedive downhill. I don't know if they got actual writers now or somebody stopped being involved. I don't know what happened, but I watched the 2 seasons after that and I tapped out at season 14. I'm like, man, this isn't the show that I fell in love with. But all the credit in the world, the fact that they did 11, 12 seasons, which is more than so many other shows, and they still maintain quality. I can go back to season 10, 11 and find you an episode that I would add to the greatest hits. You know what I mean? Not a lot of shows can do that. You have The Big Bang Theory, which I'm a diehard fan. That's my go-to comfort show when I just want to shut my brain off and laugh and enjoy. And a lot of people shit on The Big Bang Theory. I get it, but it's still one of those shows that I will love. So that and Always Sunny to me are always going to be those top tier shows, my comfort shows. But they also suffered with the same thing, later on, like you mentioned with Stranger Things, it just doesn't feel as authentic. So I right away thought about Always Sunny. Those conversations were so off the cuff, so genuine, just a bunch of bros shooting the shit the way me and you do on here. But then later it did feel more scripted. It changed and it was noticeable, especially for someone who's a diehard fan. It was very, very noticeable. So it happens to the best of them, man. Game of Thrones. Did you watch Game of Thrones?
Yeah, that was one of the things I was gonna say. I was gonna say the wrap up wasn't like Game of Thrones level bad, but it also wasn't great.
Oh, Game of Thrones was such a disappointment. And people say it was just the last season and the last few episodes. I disagree. I think the problems already started after season 4, because that's when they caught up to the books. And you could tell that those guys that adapted the books, and the first 3 seasons were very faithfully adapted, because I read the first 3 books. I tried getting into the 4th book, but it's laid out differently. And obviously, they did take creative liberties. They moved things around, different POVs. There's certain things from the books that they omitted. The first book of Song of Ice and Fire is pretty much identical. The show followed it identical. But then after that, for seasons 2, 3, 4, they took creative liberties, but it still kind of stayed true 80% of the books. But then after that, they really went off the rails. They did some things well. I thought the Ramsay character was great, but then the stuff with Jon Snow and Daenerys and man, there was no payoffs. One of my favorite characters on the show. Do you remember Littlefinger, Peter Baelish?
Yeah.
He was one of my favorite characters, because you don't know what his agenda was the entire time. He was always in the background. He was always scheming. You knew that he was in love with Catelyn Stark. And then, he had the creepy thing going with Sansa, whether it was the fact that Sansa reminded him of her mother or whether he just transferred those feelings onto her, whatever it was. But he was always in the king's ear. He was always scheming in the background, and you don't know what his motive is. It's like you're thinking, obviously the easy conclusion is he wants to be the next king. But he didn't strike me as a character who wanted to have the power, rather as a character who controlled the power from behind the scenes. And he was such an intriguing character to me. And I just wanted to know what the hell they're going to do with him in the end. And I remember just he had that little arc in Winterfell, you know, where he took it over or whatever, and then they just quickly discovered what he was up to. They executed him, you know, where people were happy about it. But I was thinking, like, man, you're building this guy up for 6 seasons, and he's always in the background. His presence is always felt. But then, I don't know, they just figured him out, and they killed him off, and that was that. It was just such a disappointment to me. So I think their problem started way earlier, and then just culminated in a very disappointing finale.
Yeah, I just think of that last scene when, I think it's what's his name's giving the speech about the who should be king, and he's like, and I think really the obvious choice. There's only one choice, Bran. And I'm like, that is literally the last choice. Like that is the least obvious choice that nobody watching the show. Like if you would have asked anybody, you know, after the first season, after the second season, after the third, after any of the seasons besides the last one, who do you think should end up as king? Ain't nobody gonna say that. Like that was like the worst choice. It was like it just felt so like, people aren't expecting this. We'll swerve them. So silly.
Yeah, man. Sometimes predictable is not necessarily a bad thing. Even when I was reading the books and it came to the Bran POV, I never skipped it, but I would like go through it very quickly, you know, because sometimes when I read, I want to take my time, but I was just skimming through those chapters. The most boring character on the show. My God, just terrible all around. But anyway, I think we're going to wrap it up now. We're already going for an hour and 40 minutes. I know you got some stuff on Instagram, but let's save it for next week because it is getting late here. I got a few things I got to take care of. Guys, thank you so much for tuning into the High Stim Experience. As always, we appreciate you being here. Like, subscribe, share, and obviously subscribe to Alex Hammerstone. I linked all his information in the video description, the YouTube channel, the Instagram, all that other fun stuff. Brother, wishing you an amazing Happy New Year, and I can't wait to see what 2026 has in store.
Right back at you, my friend.
Much love, brother. Take care, everybody. Happy New Year. Let's start off 2026 with a bang. Assassin review dropping tomorrow, guys, so make sure to check out the channel, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Much love, everybody. High Stim Ace and Alex signing off.